Welcome to my video on 2026's Supergirl. I'm going to start with a review that's only going to spoil the DCU leading up to this, before this came out, rather, which for me basically just means the 2025, I think it was, Superman. And after I've finished the review, I will get into what I call the thought section, where I'm spoiling everything about this movie as well. And yeah, the movie's rated PG-13, so will this video be. And there was a lot I loved about this movie. I'm not as big on it as, for example, the 2025 Superman. Now, since it is Pride Month, I wanted to recommend a YouTube video that fits that. And this time it will be Okie Dokie's Low-Key You Can Kinda Choose to Be a Lesbian article review. And I think that's pretty... Right, a couple more preambles. So, this is actually the first live-action Supergirl that I watch. I believe I read at least a little bit of the comics, but that was like 20 plus years ago by now. And almost 100% certain I have not read any of the comic that this is somewhat adapting. I am going to be watching and doing videos on the Arrowverse Supergirl, or CW Supergirl, but have not quite reached it yet. Right now, I'm fairly confident that that's overall going to be more my kind of thing, but I do think there's a lot to love about this film as well, and I look forward to the future of the character in the DCU. I feel like that, I don't know, I probably don't really have to justify not having watched the 1984 film. I don't have a problem with the people who worked on it. I forget, was it Faye Dunaway who played the... Is that a spoiler? Who played a major character in that? Big fan of hers. I don't offhand remember seeing, I want to say, Helen Slater played Supergirl in that. I'm not sure I'm familiar with her in anything else. Just some of the stuff I've heard about that movie puts me off. Nostalgia Chick did a video on it a while back. I guess sort of two. One like dedicated, and yeah, just did not sound, didn't seem like a very good movie. I think, and to be clear, it absolutely, it has nothing to do with the fact that it's a female-led superhero film. I maintain that some of the best superhero movies I've watched include Wonder Woman, the first solo movie, Birds of Prey, or the Fantabulous Emancipation of One Harley Quinn, and I know not everybody agrees, and that's fine, but crap. I need to stop doing so much frickin' build-up. I keep forgetting what I'm about to say when I do it. I know there was at least one more that I really... Okay, it's possible I'm not going to be able to think of it right now, but I have heard some say that, I mean, yeah, in a way, technically, you know, Black Panther Wakanda Forever is a female-led superhero film. I thought that was amazing. Now, and the ones that are not the best, in my personal opinion, it's not the fact that they're female-led. Captain Marvel, The Marvels, Black Widow, Wonder Woman 1984, Catwoman, like, I don't think they would have been better if those roles had been filled by men instead. And I really appreciate that they, at least several of them, got into subjects that feel like, you know, yeah, some stuff you might want in a movie focusing on women. And this one does have at least some of that. I don't know that I'm going to give too much away of that in the review itself, but I'll discuss it in the thought section. Anyway, yeah, I would say, you know, if you're a very big fan of at least some of the people working on this and the Superman, 2025 Superman, overall, I would say this is worth a cinema trip. Not as much as that one was. I didn't watch this in 3D. I don't actually know if it was released, at least not around here, in 3D. I don't think there were any showings on my local theater. Oh, as obviously I also, well, maybe should briefly acknowledge. So this movie has been out for about a week by now. It was a movie I really wanted to watch with a friend of mine, and he fell ill. So we watched it as soon as we could. Now, which was earlier tonight. Yeah, I think that brings us to... So yeah, the setup here, I don't know that I want to give too much away. I'll just say that it felt like a good way to explore... I should probably just go by her... Yeah, so, Kara Zor-El, or Kara for short. It is not just a, woman version of Superman, and I quite appreciated that. That is, I think it's too bad when they do make a version that is just, a woman version or an ethnic version or such of a famous character, and they don't really do anything different with it. That's something I quite appreciate about Spider-Verse, for example, also. How Miles Morales is not just Peter Parker. And, I'm not saying it's inherently wrong. I just think they, the members of these minority communities deserve better representation than just something that's like, well, it's the same as the cishet white dudes get, and now they look more like you. Like, no, let's make it more, for example, Miles Morales, you've got all these little details, the bilingual thing, for example, and this thing of how, I don't know, I guess that might be a spoiler. I'll just say there's some interesting stuff with some of the other characters there that, anyway, yeah. Kara's world is somewhat more hostile, and that just really suited the way that she views the world, which is not a spoiler. That is, established immediately in this film. And it especially, I think it was smart to do this so shortly after. I mean, again, if I recall correctly, it was just last year that Superman came out, and this is not quite how, like, the MCU didn't immediately return to, Iron Man, despite how much of a cash cow he turned out to be. And, well, I suppose the DCEU did bring back Superman almost, well, yeah, immediately, even in the second film. But, I think it worked well here to do it like this. And I think that pretty much covers that. So, yeah, as far as setup and payoff, it does well, but it is an area where, and this goes beyond the writing, the film can be a little bit straightforward. Maybe rudimentary is the word. And I know I'm not the first person to note that. Yeah, it's, I saw, I do not remember who, but critic, I believe, noted that when the movie takes big swings, they land, but it doesn't do enough of that. And that is very true, and it feels a little bit early for the DCU. I still have a lot of faith in it. I'm looking forward to more DCU, but I wouldn't have minded if they took a tiny bit longer before they settled down into something like, because that, I would definitely say, both the MCU and the DCEU were more daring early on. And I don't know. I mean, hopefully this is not going to keep... Well, no, yeah, I mean, I guess we're pretty sure it's not going to keep being the case, because certainly that Clayface movie looks very different, very daring. So maybe this is one of those, I don't know. So the following doesn't 100% apply, but a sort of one for them, one for me kind of thing. Or what, one for me, one for them, whatever. Maybe it was part of a compromise, that every so often they're going to make one that is, playing it more safe, and in, in return, they'll get to make some, really far out. Like I'm really excited for the Clayface movie. Like, it looks such like, yeah, I don't want to give away, because even though we've barely gotten, like, I think there's been one teaser trailer, and sometimes those do give more away than they should. So I'm not going to talk about it here, but and who knows, maybe it won't turn out to be fantastic. But right now I'm very excited for it. But yeah, like, I wouldn't necessarily say that this was a movie where the payoffs necessarily completely took me by surprise. And yeah, I would definitely say the movie's never really less than competent. But that's, I appreciate that there are still a bunch of movies that don't clear that bar, but that's still a little bit of a low bar, especially for something. And I appreciate, he didn't direct it. I'm pretty sure he didn't write it. But James Gunn, had something to do with this, obviously. And yeah, for him, like, having watched the Guardians of the Galaxy movies, the Christmas, the holiday special, I think they did call it, even though it is a Christmas special, obviously, which I still think that would have been better if it had been a little less, specific like that. And I can't believe I'm blanking on, yeah, I already mentioned Superman. And then we have, The Suicide Squad, the 2021 film. I don't know, it feels, yeah. Yeah, so tension and suspense, I'm going to try not to just repeat myself. I'll say when they really let loose on that, it worked rather well, and I appreciated the little things they did to increase those. And yeah, the psychological accuracy is quite high. It is a movie about, there's at least one character who is in pain, and the way that they behave feels entirely informed by that, in a way that really felt very human, and I quite appreciated that. It's not really trying to, like, never ever upset the audience. And yeah, so it stays fairly true to itself. There are times where it pulls punches, and it's not really realistic, and it shouldn't be. I'm glad that it's not trying to. That again, like, I don't particularly miss the DCEU. Like, there were some, like, some characters and such that I'm gonna miss, but so far I'm liking, I like better the way that James Gunn approaches comic book adaptations than Zack Snyder, especially when we're talking these, you know, the ones that are not. Like, I appreciate that, like, Snyder was the right person for 300, you know. Um, it's yeah, I'm not making any excuses for the politics of that movie, obviously, but yeah. Let's see. I think that pretty much brings us to the... Yeah, I thought the level of detail worked well. Like, there's some stuff where we don't get an awful lot of explanation, but it's like, I can kind of just deduce more or less. You know, you don't need more than what we get. As far as the tone goes, I think there was at least one person who used the word grime or grimy about the, yeah. I think that works as long as what we're talking about is the fact that, you know, as mentioned, this is, you know, the atmosphere here is more harsh than Superman 2025. But I've seen some panels from the comic that this is at least somewhat adapting, and it does feel a little bit flat comparatively, which, once again, like, for James Gunn, that feels very, very strange. And yeah, so I can't say much about how it is as an adaptation other than, from what I understand, it's not like complete one-to-one. I don't think it needed to be. Yeah, the I've seen some say that this feels filler to them, and I mean, I don't know. I guess I can kind of sort of see what they mean if I turn my head and squint, but no, then I just see a big duck. So I don't know. I'm not sure exactly what they were expecting, but I only read the blurbs. Maybe they go into detail in the full reviews themselves, but I don't know. I mean, it's in some ways an origin story, so it's, you know, setting things up for later. I don't know. I feel like at this point we know that, you know, how this whole thing works. Oh, by the way, if you haven't watched the Anthony Gramuglia video, let's see. My wrist is too short to look anything up right now, but I believe it's called "Why is the Supergirl film so hated?" or so the hate is so for, something along those lines. And I think that yeah. So the dialogue, I thought they did a good job on both writing and delivery. There is at least one thing that is said multiple times, and I felt like they, you know, they used it well. Yeah. That brings us nicely to the direction. So I am a tiny bit familiar already with Craig Gillespie, I think that's how you pronounce it, who directed this, because this is the same director as Cruella. And I kind of feel like the one thing about Cruella that I would say, I don't know about that, is kind of the fact that it exists at all. I mean, in the form that it is, this thing of like, you know, so, you know, Cruella, we all know Cruella de Vil, one of the most hated and despicable of all the animated Disney villains, and there's some hefty competition. Yeah, she's secretly misunderstood. Like, I'm sorry, are we still talking about the same? Her name is Cruella de Vil. But I loved the Emmas matching wits. The production was immaculate. The needle drops, like, I genuinely, I've already said my one complaint about that film. You know, I think he did very well there. And I think I would like to watch, I think it's called I, Tonya, Margot Robbie, as Tanya Harding, I think was her name. Is her name? Yeah, you know, that got praise, and I am quite fond of Margot. I've been very impressed by her and everything I've seen her in. Yeah, I would definitely say that. So if I understand correctly, this might be the first time Craig has directed action. And while I would definitely say this is better than, for example, Bryan Singer's, the first X-Men, it did feel a little bit like just it's not bad, but it doesn't pop the way that, for example, James Gunn's does. And we have kind of reached a point where, these movies, it's not difficult to find a big budget blockbuster superhero flick where the action is outstanding. And so for it to be, yeah, like if I would definitely say if you go to the cinema for these primarily for like action, in that regard, I wouldn't necessarily say that you need to watch it on the biggest screen possible immediately. I don't know. Maybe I'm being a little too hard on that. It was good. It was never less than good. It just, yeah, coming off some of these other, yeah, I think it's been years since I watched one where it was just good and not like, yeah, because let's see. I mean, I already mentioned Superman. Other than that, what have we had recently? Fantastic Four First Steps, Thunderbolts. Yeah, it's I guess okay. At least some of what we got in Captain America 4 was not, better than this. But I do have faith that Sam Wilson can lead a fantastic story on his own. I do still think that they did a really solid job on the miniseries, Falcon the Winter Soldier. Anyway, yeah, so the cinematography and editing, I wouldn't necessarily say that they're like groundbreaking, but the it's mostly that it feels like it is holding back a little bit much. Like there's stuff that could be more dramatic than it is allowed to be here. But yeah, everything looks good. There's a definite emphasis here on character interaction, and that is handled quite well, both from like a technical standpoint and also just like acting and such. Now yeah, I was impressed by the production value, set design, locations, costumes, and makeup. It does not feel cheap, and it has the, I have noticed some have said it feels a little bit like a mix of Mad Max and Star Wars, and that's not untrue, if unfortunate, because I don't know. There's some Star Wars movies I'd choose before this one. I know I still haven't watched past the original Mad Max. I will at some point. I own the first 4. I will get my hands on a copy of the most recent one, and then I'm gonna do all 5 of them. But the yes, the other thing, where was we? We were where? We weren't warriors. That's not what we were. Right. But yeah. We get to see where someone lives and places they choose to go to out of their own volition and such, and really communicate things about the characters, as well as what they're wearing and when and such. So the music, I remember there was a needle drop that was criticized in at least one review. I think I might know which one it is, but it didn't really, I didn't recognize the band that they mentioned. So I don't know. By and large, I thought they really worked, and the original score is also quite good. I mean, once again, I'm sorry if we are grading, I get, which I guess we are on the gun scale. Yeah, I wouldn't say that any of the music here hits as hard as his needle drops do. And yeah, the sound design is great. There's some stuff where, because it's PG-13, we only really hear it, we don't see it, and boy, did they do a phenomenal job on making it still really hit. The characters, I think I'm just briefly going to get out of the way. The villain is kind of bland. Again, not the first person to say that. Outside of that, I mean, I'd definitely say there's at least one character that I know at least some were expecting to appear more than they ended up doing. But I don't particularly have issues with how characters were handled. Um, the the major ones are compelling, and I guess that segues nicely into the acting. So this is the first I watch, I think, of a decent number of the major players here, and I was impressed by all of them. I'd like to watch more of yeah. Um, Millie. Let's see if I've heard it pronounced both ways, but if I understand correctly, it's Alcock, not all. And yeah, she does really, really well. Some of you may remember that I wasn't sure how I felt about, in the post credits, was it, or was it just the ending of the 2025 Superman? I was like, is she going to be drunk the entire movie? And I'm not going to give away whether she is, but I don't know. I think I did say I was still cautiously optimistic because I've heard such great things. She's on that Game of Thrones spinoff, which does sound really compelling. I've heard really, really impressive things about it. Um, that is also a bandwagon I have remained off. I'm really not sure. Like, considering how much bad I've heard about the ending of Game of Thrones, I don't know if I'm gonna get into that. But the spin-offs do sound great. Anyway, yeah, she does really, really well. Like, this is a movie that requires her to start, at least. I'm not going to say if she does change or not, but certainly at the start, she has to be, I mean, I guess the word is train wreck, and not have the audience just irritated and just being like, "Oh, come on now, pull yourself together," kind of thing. And she nails it. Um, that was, yeah. And I believe it was Eve Ridley, maybe the name of one of the co-stars. She does really well, and see, I don't think I can go too much more into detail about who else, because some of them I think technically qualify spoilers. So I'll leave it at that. But yeah, everyone does really, really well here, and yeah, I already mentioned that I'd watch the actors in more. I'd also like to see these characters. I feel like at least some of them I'm gonna see again. But yeah, I'm looking forward to it. And yeah, other than that, so the yeah, it's well paced. It never really grinds to a halt or rushes, and the effects and stunt work are quite well done. I I appreciate that it never felt like we were just supposed to like sit and gawk at a special effects display. Like they make a sincere effort to make sure there's always emotion behind it. And yeah, the stunts help the action scenes hit harder. And there's some that are, yeah, quite impressive. And yeah, so as far as I guess I'll just briefly note. So as far as comedy goes, there are definitely things in this that had me laughing. I've seen some say that there's too much gross out stuff, and I think there was specifically, at least some of them were, saying, "Isn't this movie for young women?" And I mean, I appreciate that, like, the stereotype goes that young women hate that kind of thing, but there are quite a few women who love it. I mean, I would definitely say the movie's not trying to be for every young woman, I mean, there are going to be some who hate the idea of, already are, that the lead here, I already mentioned, yeah, she's not in a great place here, and yeah, I mean, listen, if you want one where it's like, oh wow, what a role model, Wonder Woman 1 exists. It's not in theaters right now. I wouldn't mind if it were. I might go watch it again there. But like, and I don't know, we might down the line in the DCU get one that's more of a role model. I don't really think that that's what, like, I'm obviously, I'm not speaking for women, but I'm just saying, there are so many stories. Like, I've definitely noticed in recent years, there's this trend towards more complex female leads. And I definitely think they've done some really amazing stuff there. Like, I maybe mention it too frequently, but I think the 3 seasons of Jessica Jones on Netflix, fantastic. I find that more compelling than a lot of stuff that is more about, oh, look at this woman who, yeah, just is like a good role model. Like, I get if you're making something for small children, it's good to have role models, but this is for like 13-year-olds and up. Um, it's really more. It's not trying to be that, and it's kind of silly that there are people acting like, oh, that's like. I mean, the movie never sold itself as that. Like, have you watched literally any of the marketing? Like, clearly, she's a mess, and that's relatable, you know? And yeah, so there has been, I guess it might, hmm, let's go with a non-zero number of interviews and such, where reporters from outlets that, if I understand correctly, are specifically geared towards LGBTQIA plus, readers and such, have, asked Millie about, the yeah, the character being this, I want to say bi icon, but at least, oh wait, Q-word icon, I think was the, yeah, sorry, still uncomfortable using that term. I appreciate the value of a reclaimed slur, but I hate the idea of someone watching a video of mine and feeling like I'm trying to, you know, use a slur that targets them. And if I recall correctly, Millie basically said, well, the character is not trying to be, trying to fit alongside what is expected of a young woman. And yeah, the, gross out stuff is part of that. I mean, as long as we're not, I want to make it clear, we're not comparing as far as artistry goes, but yeah, you know, uh, you could maybe, compare this somewhat to like Lady Gaga, this sort of thing of like trying to appeal to the outsider among young women. Uh, you know, yeah, not mainstream. And I think that pretty much, yeah. Um, some of the jokes definitely are hit and miss. That is also very James Gunn of it. But I definitely did feel like there was at least a little bit too much of the sort of MCU style humor where there is a dramatic scene that is being kind of defanged by having like, yeah, silly little jokes, and I wish that they had just let it play, or maybe just adjusted it in a different way. But yeah, that is a trope that I wouldn't mind if it retires in the not too distant future. And even like at this point, sometimes the MCU is not doing it terribly much now. Other than that, yeah, so it is fun as this sort of sci-fi and or fantasy kind of thing. It's not like deep necessarily, but it has some really fun, you know, things there that, yeah. And the action. So the quality, variety, and delivery of that element is handled well. And there definitely are some scenes that you're gonna remember for a while after watching. Yeah, I think that pretty much. Hmm. Yeah. So the as a PG-13, I will definitely say there was at least one bit where you could tell that that's what it was, and it did feel hampered by that. And I wish they had just like it's essentially just if it had been filmed and edited slightly differently. Like don't get me wrong, we're not talking about like Pompeii. Like boy did that movie not hide well that it you know it wanted to be R. Anyway, yeah. As far as superpower use goes, I thought it was sufficiently creative and there was the right amount of it. It doesn't overpower the movie, but it also isn't, you know, that there's so little of it that, it's not a movie that is ashamed of being a superhero, a comic book adaptation, which that is something I really appreciate. Like it took a little too long, in my opinion, for the DCEU to get there. And so far, yeah, the DCU hit the ground running as far as that goes. And yeah, overall, the yeah, I guess I more or less already said, but whatever. The 2025 Superman does top this. Apparently, there were no post-credit scenes. That was what the internet said, and trusted that. Left the theater as soon as the end credits started rolling. Yeah, I rate this 7 outer space stories featuring Kara out of 10. Does that make it sound like it's an anthology? It's not. Whatever. So, that brings us to the thoughts. If it saves, there we go. Thought section. From here on out, I'm spoiling everything about this movie. So I think I'll try to keep this chronological, best I can. So I thought that it worked well that we open on this montage of Kara partying and then, using the yellow sun to recharge, which also is this thing of like they're it's double duty. Both that this is just how she deals with this, that's her hangover cure, but also, in case you didn't know, yellow sun recharges, you know, Kryptonians. And she herself later in the film explains about the red sun. And let's see. Yeah, I remember some people really hated it in the trailer. I thought it worked both there and here. This thing of having crypto urinate on the newspaper that has a story praising Cal. It is this thing of like that is how the two cousins, she is nowhere near that level of like celebrity and beloved by the people. And yeah, that is a really significant part of her character, and by the end of the movie, she has taken some steps in that direction. I would like to see her struggle a little with it. I know a lot of women who become famous, there are some, I'm just going to come out and say it, there's so much misogyny in a patriarchal capitalist society, and yeah, a lot of women, yeah, that it's, they're treated really, really badly. And I think, I mean, I'm not saying he has to write or direct it, but under James Gunn's, he's the sort of Kevin Feige of the DCU. I think he could definitely help. Maybe it would be good if it was written and directed by women, actually. I think that could really help it. Similar to how, I mean, I think we can all hopefully appreciate that's part of why Birds of Prey is so in touch with what young women go through. That movie would have been very different if that were not the case. But I mean, you can genuinely just like, if you watch, I'm not recommending it, but you could hypothetically watch the 2016 Suicide Squad. I would definitely recommend watching Birds of Prey again. There's quite a difference in how Harley is depicted, But yeah, I think that would be an interesting next step in her journey. I did see at least one person say that they worry that we're not going to get another Supergirl film anytime soon, that she's just going to appear in other people's movies. I don't know. I hope that we get more. They can really build onto this, because this is not, oh, okay, her journey's over now. Her arc is over. And I mean, I don't know if, can you on a PG-13? Maybe you could do a thing of her struggling to quit drinking. Because, like, at the end of this one, she just says that she doesn't think she's going to do that again for a while. It would be wonderful if it were that easy, but if you talk to people who struggle with drinking, no, it's not. It's the first step. And I think they could do something with that, because you could totally have, it's just real quick. I'm not going to spend forever on it, but maybe the first scene in the movie, she wakes up and she's about to take a drink, and she's like, "Oh wait, I'm trying not to." And later in the movie, things are starting to look tough, or maybe she's just bored, and she's like, "I could get a drink." No, no. And then by the end, it's this thing of like, is she gonna give in and drink, or is she gonna fight the villain? That sort of thing. And that's, if you're gonna do fame and alcoholism in the same movie, those pair really, really well, because fame has led to a lot of people developing substance abuse problems of various kinds. Anyway, I think that pretty much Yeah, so once we're through the montage, we see the death. I will say I was a tiny bit confused. I mean, no, it is that it happened very recently. I think I guess it's not really a flashback. Ruthie's first scene. It's not a flashback. It's just that we time skip a little bit because really all that happened is that she buries the family. That came out wrong. What I mean to say is, as far as what transpires, that is the extent of it. I'm not saying it's easy to bury your loved ones. I appreciated how much they went for the emotion there. We have just, yeah, the tension as, you know, this kind of essentially like Western thing. I feel like I'm not the only person who was reminded of like the good, the bad, and the ugly. He comes in, he has some of the. He's kind of Krem is kind of always eating and drinking other people's food. It's almost his defining characteristic. But yeah, he asks for the swords, and he's told he can have them as long as he leaves immediately after. And they insult him. I do continue to think it is a little silly when someone is in, established as like unappealing because they're a messy eater. Because it's like, you know, it's, what is that? It's pie. I mean, I kind of thought that was obvious, but okay, yeah. And they hand it to him, and there's a knife, and he like stabs it, and it's like, I think you're trying to say, oh, he's such a violent person. That I don't know. Let me know. Maybe I'm wrong here. This felt, there were some Sergio Leone kind of things. I want to say that was Once Upon a Time in the West. We've got characters who or characters. We've got someone appearing on screen at least one point where you kind of get the sense, oh wow, they just cannot not be in conflict with the world around them, like no matter what. And then he just like kind of shoves it in his mouth in a way that's just like, yeah, I don't know. I agree. It's not, he doesn't have good table manners. It just kind of feels like I don't know. I guess what I'm saying is, if they weren't, I understand why, but clearly they didn't want him to engage in violence against a living being on screen until he kills the son. But if not for that, you could maybe have had a thing of like, you are said to have the best swords in the region. Who gave you that idea? And then he like presents well, let's see. I guess that's a little intense. Okay, yeah, he says no. Yeah. He could just say, well, you remember your old friend, name? Oh yeah, sure. Well, he doesn't. Was he in One Piece the last time you saw him? Well, I can't say the same. Something like that. He tortured his way into finding out how this, but the eating just felt like okay. And I'm not saying that in and of itself is like sign of a bad movie. There are amazing movies that also do that. But yeah, and yeah, so she, Ruthie stands there watching, and then her brother, who's had the headphones on, sees her there and just thinks he's gonna have fun by giving her a jolt, jump scaring her. And Krem just kills him without even like checking to see if that's actually someone dangerous. Just like a fast movement is enough. And I did appreciate the idea of having the two. I know some people don't like if innocent people are killed without putting up a fight in some of these stories. A lot of the time I think it's like, well, why did they have to? I do think it works well here because that really is communicating very clearly, like, yeah, genuinely, even they are, because he makes swords, he's not a warrior, but they still try to kill Krem as revenge for killing their son. That's how brutal of a world this is. They were willing to let him go if all he was going to do was steal from them. But as soon as he engages in violence, they try to meet him there. And let's see. I think that does more or less cover. I guess no, yeah, it also felt a bit Sergio Leone, this thing of like, will the villain kill this particular character or will they let them live, kind of thing. The tension there felt, yeah. And yeah, so Kara is partying. She grabs the drink from someone who's too drunk to drink. Evidently they already drank, and she's handed the aux cord on the promise that she's not going to play something trash. And I think that is when, so yeah, some partying, and then Ruthie enters, demands their attention. And this scene, I really felt like it would have been better to not have the jokes. I think it should instead have focused on the tension, because the tension is good. Like, as soon as she enters and gives her big speech, like, like, everyone watching, like, I felt the theater, the entire crowd be like, oh no, build on that instead of undercutting, because we've got the thing of like, oh, where'd the music go? Crypto. No, don't do that. Just like focus, because you could cut to different like alien faces, and they're like licking their lips, and they're like, maybe some of them like exchange glances, like, we could take her, like, what, come on now, and yeah, it was especially the part where she raises the sword and says, so this thing is super expensive. So she's got enthusiasm, and that is appreciated, that is important. She's got confidence. She does not have the life experience to be embarking on a quest like this on her own. It is completely clear from the very start she's going to need some, and I do like that they kept bringing up that monologue, because later, apparently she's going door to door saying it, and Kara's like, I know, and then there at the end, Kara says, this is Ruthie of the Dastian clan. That was sweet, she went from being like, shut up, I get it, to say, to using that herself to try to get appreciation and respect for Ruthie. That really worked. It's just the jokes in this first one, but yeah, and yeah. So one of the aliens grabs the sword, and Kara goes to get it back. And I will say, these scenes where she is drunk while fighting, I was reminded a tiny bit of Logan, and I'm sorry, Logan is superior, but I did think they got some good stuff out of it, And yeah, there were little touches that worked well. The thing about, so yeah, she oh, also just real quick, the thing about, so at least some of the time we deduced what the alien said without subtitles, but then at one point she says, "You think I talk too much? Well, I don't have to talk so much." You really don't need her to say, "You think I talk too much." You could just say, like, hypothetically, quick rewrite off the top of my head, have her say, "That's not very nice, and no, I don't talk too much," or something like that, but this kind of like, just can't believe I'm blanking on Bob Newhart. This Bob Newhart, we're only hearing one side of the telephone conversation thing of repeating what the other person said. That just felt off to me. But yeah, so she leaps and knocks him off the, and then you have the bit where he attacks her with this heavy thing, and she's like, "Listen, dude, I'm winded," and then shortly after she does use it on him, and that was a good moment, because it's like, she just says she was winded. It's not like she was passing out or something. She just needed a couple of seconds. And also this thing of like, oh, so Kara like attacks someone when they're not ready. Yeah, he was gonna do that to her. Once again, like, she is not her cousin. And I think that does bring us nicely to, so yeah, I was surprised that Kara did do something good for Ruthie that early on. I thought it was gonna be longer before it, but she does also, immediately say that's the extent of it, but yeah, the thing about, like, that's not nice. You can't steal from someone who's recently orphaned, because, like, at this point, like, what's in it for her? This is before Crypto needs medicine. There's, she's just doing it because her father said to be good. And yeah, I mean, if David Krumholtz told me to be good, yeah, I think I think many of us feel that way. It's great to see him again. Yeah, my father and I are actually rewatching Oppenheimer right now, and I mean, that is in general such a stacked cast. I guess what I'm trying to say is I'm really glad that he started doing more serious stuff. I do love, let's see, 10 Things I Hate About You and Addams Family, but I was not the biggest fan of some of the others. What was it called? He did a movie with Mila Jovovich and Denise Richards. Yeah, that wasn't, I didn't think that was the best, you know, he's so much better elsewhere. Anyway, I think that does. Yeah, also part of, Kara being a mess. She doesn't even close the door. Like, it's not like Ruthie reopens the door from outside. Kara does not close the door to the outside before she goes to the bathroom, where she also does not close the door, and that is like, yeah, some people, if they're sufficiently drunk, that's how they behave, and let's see, I think that is when, yeah, so we have the thing about the they leave with Crypto briefly. And I did also really like that right from the start, like, Ruthie, she's perhaps naive, but she's not, like, incapable of deductive reasoning. She notes, well, the ship was destroyed. They must need another ship so we can track them. That is, and I honestly thought that was going to be more of the movie, that they were going to be tracking them on the one planet, but then, modern day blockbuster, you need a lot of different locations. But yeah, and so yeah, Crypto is poisoned. And I will say, I'm okay with the amount of Crypto in the film, because we got so much in 2025 Superman. He wasn't free, um, that entire movie, but he was in a lot of the movie. And I do think they did enough. Like, hypothetically, if you didn't watch that, if you just watched this, I would say you probably still felt, emotionally, like it got to you when something happened to, because this is a cute dog, even if it's misbehaving. And let's see. I think that does bring us to the... yeah, I will just note, as my friend pointed out after we watched it, they didn't really get as much tension and sadness out of Crypto having been poisoned as they could have. And that really surprised me for James Gunn. Yeah. I think that might also... Yeah, and so they fly off. We see Krem once again taking food from someone else. And yeah, I mean, I think part of it is just this idea that he considers everything as belonging to him. He takes things he doesn't even really need, Yeah. He, in a way, there is this, yeah. He's either a kleptomaniac or Drax. He takes things literally. And yeah, so let's see. I also really liked, I think it's might be already at this point in the movie where Kara points out to Ruthie that she is not going to like who she becomes if she gets revenge. Statistically speaking, revenge rarely provides the catharsis we think it will. And yeah, I think that is when we get... Yeah, so we have the... Yeah, there's the conversation with the vet. And I don't know why they felt the need to spell out about the time limit. That felt like... What was there, like a test screening where people were asleep for that part or something? Like, so they say it will be 3 moon rises. Okay, 3 days. 3 days, so 72 hours. And then we see her methodically wind the clock. Like, I think we get it at this point. Is that like... Are all the DCU movies gonna open with, like, or in this case perhaps not open, but early on gonna have something of like, okay, so this amount of time, and then here they were like, well, let's just use the same amount of time over and over. Sorry, it's saying something about the quality is not going to be as good for the rest of the video. Sorry about that. Nothing I can really do, unfortunately. Anyway, I think, but yeah, and she notes, the best thing you can do is just stay here with Crypto. And yeah, she does show up on the bus. And I like the thing about, he basically said, welcome aboard. Yeah, sure he did. Well, I had to clean it up a little. But the purple monkey dishwasher part was always in there. And the, let's see. Yeah, that's when we get the... Yeah, fairly shortly after, we have the thing where... So now we've had Ruthie translate for Kara, and here Kara translates, or, communicates with the alien that Ruthie is incapable of communicating with. I quite appreciate it, because it's one of those things of like, there's this idea in a lot of media that if someone speaks multiple languages, they speak every language, and if someone doesn't speak every language, they must only speak one language. And that's just not how reality works. Like, I know some people who speak many languages, but they don't speak all of them, like if you look at if there's someone who's able to communicate with a lot of different languages, they might have like friends who are helping them translate at least some of it. And yeah, so appreciated that. And yeah, so Kara is like, oh no, as soon as Ruthie comes aboard. And the thing about like, do you mind moving over so I can sit next to my friend? I mean, in a way, it's sweet, and I appreciate like the movie isn't like overly laughing at her. Like I felt more like a thing of like, I remember being like that, being that, just yeah, she like at least some of the time, Ruthie kind of meets the world with a smile and an open heart. If she's not facing the brigands or such, she is just like, oh, hi, what's your name? And that's not literally that, but yeah, and let's see, I think that's when we get, yeah, and so the pirates attack. And that was also fun, and I appreciated the detail that so Kara understands, do not just fight, wait for, figure something out. And yeah, Ruthie does not, appreciate that yet. She's just thinking about not wanting to lose the sword. And yeah, Kara manages to steal one of those little teleporty things, and yeah, that was a very fun, creative action scene of the yeah, the little spiders. She gets the spiders to jump onto the pirates instead and such, and yeah, I think I also really appreciate, so with Kryptonians, it can be necessary to basically be like, okay, we're gonna have to, like, sometimes they focus on making it emotional, and that can definitely work on its own. I noted that in recent ones they tend to go for that, but also have some kind of, something that weakens them at least temporarily. And so here, yeah, first she's drunk, later she is poisoned, and then there's some kryptonite effect, so yeah. And yeah, so they don't go to the same, they don't do the exact same thing too often, in my opinion. Now, yeah, very cool, the part where so she ends up, on that with the space thing. And I don't know, it kind of made me chuckle the bit with, I bet you really want this thing, and then she flips on, oh, sorry, wrong pocket. Right, some have said, they basically turned Kara into Star-Lord. There's a little bit of that there, but it's really not as much. Yeah. I think that pretty much brings us to the, yeah, so we have the, yeah, I thought they did a good job establishing that to Kara, crypto is basically everything, and I really appreciate this. It's such an important thing to get into today because, like, sadly, there are a bunch of doomers out there. I'm not saying it's easy not to become one, but it's worth resisting. And this movie helps underline, hey, if you make your world really small and you don't let anybody in, there's still going to be pain, and you're just going to be alone during it. Because imagine if she had formed relationships before this movie. I'm not saying, Cal wouldn't be flying around with her while she's drinking. Obviously, he's needed on Earth. But imagine if every so often she made a friend and they all went together, she could have had a support system, now that she's worried she's going to lose crypto. But instead, she is essentially almost alone in it. Ruthie is there, but it's not quite the same. And let's see. Yeah, this thing of, Cal says, I'm worried you're not going to find your people. And she says, I have no people. And yeah, there's some found family here. I mean, I appreciate technically Cal is less found. Well, no, it doesn't count as found family if you're blood, even if you've not met for many years. But yeah, you have the thing about the. I mean, I don't know if Kara and Ruthie are actually gonna keep, having much of a relationship after the end of this movie, but she does invite in Ruthie there at the end, to celebrate her birthday, and not with drinking. And I feel like that pretty much covers... there's at least one more thing. Let me just real quick see if I can... What was it? What was the other thing that I wanted to say? Maybe it'll come to me later. That's when we... yeah, so they get some information out of the pirates. And yeah, she is torturing, which, I mean, there was at least threats. Now, yeah, I guess it technically was torture what Superman describes having done to Putin Yahoo. Yeah, anyway, I think that might... Now I remember. So one of the things we also see here, now I appreciate that the following is not a one-to-one, but they talk about that Krypton was destroyed when the core imploded, something like that. That feels somewhat like climate change, and yeah, that is something we're really going to have to do a lot to alleviate the effects of. We're already seeing a lot of the effects of it. And I'm not saying you as an individual can do, don't let them fool you into thinking, oh, just like... What I'm saying is organize, become part of one of the groups that, yeah. And through, in part, the destruction. And I appreciate this point about, the gods are not so merciful. It didn't happen in one day. And that, again, climate change, it's not just going to be one day. But yeah, Kara is drinking her pain away. She is pretending like she's going to be able to just run away forever. And we are seeing a number of young people today, not all of them women, but yeah, some of them for sure women, struggling with this. And it's really no wonder. Capitalism, especially laissez-faire, it alienates the worker from the fruits of their labor, from each other, from joy in life, and part of it is also the death of third spaces. But yeah, it's extremely important to find someone, to not be alone, not let the negative thoughts weigh you down. It's not about suppressing them. It's about talking to someone, and maybe trying to channel your energy into, once again, organizing, And yeah, by the end of the movie, first it's with Ruthie and then it's with Cal. And she says this time she's going to stay on Earth. She's going to form relationships. And I think that also is something they could do something with if they give her another solo movie soon. Have her building a relationship and struggling with it. And maybe that's also part of how she sometimes feels tempted to drink again because, relationships are messy. You don't get exactly what you want all the time, and that's okay. And yeah, so let's see, right, also the idea of the brigands, blackmailing people, but not blackmailing, whatever, pressuring with the, poisoning and then having the antidote on them makes sense. And I think the next thing is when they get to the I think that might be the waypoint or something. And yeah, listen, I'm not gonna say that I necessarily thought that it was super funny. This idea of, you know, well, I don't know, slurm popcorn, I guess. But I don't know. I'm sure there are people who thought that was hilarious, and that's great for them. I didn't think it like derailed it or anything. I mean, I will say I did think it was mildly amusing, at least when, at one point, yeah, she takes a couple and he's like, these taste like crap, and it's like, I mean, I would assume so. And then she hands it to Ruthie, and it's like, is that what you think of her? Like, you really you do. And I don't know. I mean, I'm not gonna pretend like that's literally the state of like fast food, but there are situations where, because she watches the thing fill it up and then she gets some of it, and there are people who will watch videos of how disgusting, fast food is, before it's served to you, and they'll still go out and buy it. So yeah, I'm sorry if this convinces a bunch of teenagers to stop eating junk food. I don't think that's a bad thing. And yeah, I think that does pretty much. And it again just highlights, that's how awful this environment is. That's what they consider a snack. And that's, yeah. So they go to that bar, and yeah, that's when we find out about how the brigands engage in sex trafficking. Now, it is extremely important to discuss that today because it is an actual problem. There are a disturbingly high number of young men who worship a non-zero number of, if I say men in heavy quotation marks, does it sound like I'm saying, oh, they're not really, I'm not saying that they're more like women. I'm saying they're more like boys. They are like children. And yeah, they've bragged about engaging this sort of thing, and they're still disturbingly popular with entirely too high number of young men. So it is an actual problem. I understand those who said that maybe it shouldn't be in a movie for 13-year-olds. I I don't know. Maybe that is accurate. I don't think I'm personally qualified to discuss that. If maybe it should be in stuff that's rated R, but it did not feel as earned or as well implemented here as. See, is it a spoiler if I say exactly what movie I'm talking about? Well, actually, yeah, come to think of it, okay, I'll it's because the movie, the Black Widow solo movie, has a somewhat similar, not the exact same thing, but there is an element that bears a resemblance, and that's I don't consider that a spoiler, but it's set up very early in the film. But in that one, it really felt like, okay, that's what they built the movie around. That is the ground. What's that laid the groundwork. And then here, like, we're a chunk into the movie before it's mentioned at all, and then we just have a few bits with, like, it was great. Like, obviously, it's wonderful seeing these, girls really be freed. And I did also appreciate, like, they were really pushing the villainy on Krem. Not only does he kill the parents, he also kills Sarna, just out of spite. But it is, again, I do think it makes a lot of sense to discuss things like that in movies that are at least partially made for women. Yeah, I think... Yeah, I thought it worked. The arm wrestling, that was also... Didn't love that they had the joke about Kara and the arm wrestler moving Ruthie's chair back and forth. I'm sorry, is this a funny... child trafficking scene? Like, I'm sorry, what are we doing here? That is just... yeah. And that is... I'll admit, that did feel like something, I don't know if James Gunn came up with that or just didn't, veto it, or, but that there are things in some of his movies that, yeah, uh, that are kind of misjudged like that. IMO. Anyway, yeah, very cool as she fights all the guys in the bar. I like that at least some of it is, we're seeing Ruthie hiding. And let's see, that's yeah, I think that is when they so we have after the fight, they say that everybody knows the brigands, and they poison her. I will say that also felt very strange, because, like, it seemed like Kara was aware. Like, isn't she sober at this point? uh I don't know, I because she handled Lobo well, but then she drinks the thing. Because at first I was thinking, like, oh, she's like pretending to drink it or something. Nope, she drank it. Like, it feels like she should have been drinking before she started seeing suspicious things, but yeah. And yeah, Lobo, I have not really read very much in the comics. I know he once fought Wolverine. I like that. But other than that, yeah. Which was, of course, momentous, because Wolverine's Marvel and Lobo's DC. But yeah, I mean, as soon as I think the first time I saw Jason Momoa in anything, two thoughts: Kraven the Hunter or Lobo. And I'm not talking about the Sheriff. And yeah, it's great that he got to play at least one of those. I don't know. I guess it's not impossible. Maybe at some point he'll play Kraven also. But I don't know. It might be a while before the bad taste of that movie is washed out. I still haven't watched it. I'm waiting for a really, really ridiculously low price DVD. My back was in too much pain to watch it at the time that it was in theaters. Or I guess if it hits a streaming service I have. Anyway, yeah, I think that does bring us nicely to the... Let's see. Is that when we get the flashback? That's when we get the conversation, at least. Yeah, the thing about, like, is Superman like you? Grumpy and rude? You think I'm rude? Because if you isolate yourself, if you push people away, some people are going to perceive you worse than your own self-image. That is, sad fact of life. And yeah, she's comfortable with being grumpy, but she doesn't want to be thought of as rude. And let's see, we have the bit with the yeah, let's see, there's the thing with, yeah, also I thought it worked that each time they, go to a new place, we're told what kind of sun it has. And yeah, great flashbacks. I love the thing about, like, it's okay to be naughty. You don't have to be perfect, but just be good, just do good. And that's such a wonderful thing to tell young people today, because listen, nobody is perfect. Perfection is something we may strive towards, but it is impossible to reach. And if you hold yourself to that standard, you're just going to be miserable. But you can always do your best to make the right choice, to make the world a better place. And you'll be happier for it, even if if you need, that kind of cynical reason to do it. It will make you happier, even if you don't care about making the world a better place. You are happier when you're doing good than when you're actively doing something that you deep down know is unethical. There are studies that bear this out. And some people reject those results because they note that in the short term the hate makes them feel good. It can connect people, but it's not as effective in the long term. It hollows you out if you dive too deep into it. A lot of the most miserable people, it's because they just focused on their negative emotions all the time, didn't process them, and didn't try to do good. Now, the let's see. Yeah, also the detail that they didn't know that she was Kryptonian, so they thought that the poison would have a strong enough impact. Kind of, yeah. And the fact that you have this thing of, one of the parents, I think it might be the mother, is willing to give up Kara and Ruthie in exchange for Sarna, and the father regrets it, and I don't know. I hope they're not trying to say something bad about women. I guess probably not, because the movie's so much about, it doesn't really seem like what the movie's going for the rest of the time. I think it's more of this thing of like the bond between a mother and her offspring. She carried Sarna. I guess I shouldn't put numbers to it, because just because they're humanoid doesn't mean they're human. But yeah, there is a bond that forms there. And I'm not saying that you're not a parent if you adopted, for example, or something. Anyway, let's see. That, yeah, again, we're seeing this thing of like how this world just corrupts so many. It is a difficult place to do good or be good, but Kara still manages. She didn't just decide to do good. She managed to do good in this world that is so hostile to that. Yeah, Lobo, I didn't mind that he wasn't in that much of it. I know some people are expecting him to be in more. I think it's fine. I doubt it's the last time we're going to see him. I saw someone say that Jason Momoa has kind of been playing Lobo for years now. Now finally or playing other characters as if they were Lobo, and now he's finally playing Lobo. Yeah, I thought it worked. I liked his Aquaman rather well, but I think it works even better here. And yeah, he got some of the best action, and also helped add some more variety, so it's not, limited essentially to super strength flying and laser eyes. I'm not saying that has to be a limitation, but I think it worked well here that there were other things as well. Anyway, I think that might let's see. There's at least one more. Yeah, the entire bit with, so we get a little bit of backstory on Lobo and Kara. It was funny. The ongoing, I thought it worked. The running gag of, stay here. And then she doesn't. And at one point, Ruthie gets up and starts walking over to Lobo, and Kara like tries to grab her and then realizes she can't, so she just sits back down. Like, I'm not getting involved. And then, when Ruthie starts talking and, does the spiel, yeah, we have the, what's it called? Kara rushes over and does a spot-on imitation of like this kind of, yeah, um, young, naive kind of, just doesn't understand what's going on. And yeah, Lobo's just like, okay, whatever, And I think that's when, yeah, so Kara tries to get them to take her to the right place, and yeah, I mean, they do take them to near the brigands, but it is a place with a green, was it green sun and yellow sun, I think it was, and so, the green gradually, saps her of her strength and would kill her eventually. And the fact that it is actually, she is saved by Ruthie, and not because Ruthie badassedly kills some brigands, no, but because she has the empathy. Because, like, think about it. At this point, she might as well say, well, screw you. The brigands are right up there. I don't need you to find them anymore. Because remember, that's what she said she needed. She never said that she needs muscle. She was confident that she could kill Krem herself. But she sees this young woman who has caused her fair share of problems and keeps telling her, keeps giving her orders that she clearly hates. But when she sees her in need, she jumps at the chance to help her. And, that small act of kindness does get her captured, but it did also save Kara's life, and ultimately the yellow sun gives her her powers back, and so we get the climax, and she manages to get out of prison by pretending she's still as naive as she was before, and I like that she frees Lobo as well, and yeah, great stuff with the motorcycle and the chain with the hook, and yeah. And they do some great stuff in the climax with the idea of, oh, is Ruthie gonna fall to the ground? And then eventually she kind of does, but by that point they're so close to the ground. That was quite good. And yeah, the like tank cars that they're on, and yeah, I think that might pretty much cover. Let's see. So I think that does pretty much, yeah. So there at the end, I genuinely wasn't sure if it really was going to end with Ruthie killing. Instead, it is Kara who, yeah, does the deed, and yeah, did remind me of a different DC movie, but I can't say which one without spoiling it. And yeah, I don't know. Is the DCU just gonna end every movie with a superpowered young woman killing someone that Superman wouldn't? But I do also appreciate, like, he is such a despicable villain. We love to hate this guy, so on that, as far as that goes, it makes sense. And it's also this idea of Kara is willing to take on the burden of that, and it's, she's not. For a while, she just wanted to get the antidote. She has not been on a revenge quest for 3 days now, as Ruthie has, and the age difference and such. And Yeah, love that we saw some uh on I think it had a name, but I forget what it was. But the little bit that they cut away from Krypton that ended up poisoning, that we see her having fun on the Argon maybe, and yeah, like no wonder she's so sad, having lost so much. And I liked seeing her arrive on Earth and Superman trying to, and then this thing of like, oh, I'm sorry, I don't actually speak Kryptonian, because I'm sorry, that's literally all that we're asked to do if we come across someone that we want to help, but we don't speak their language. Like, you don't have to. There's no need to get angry at them. The yeah, just say, oh, I'm sorry, I don't speak that language. And yeah, the part where he goes like, do you oh, why am I talking louder? That is such a silly thing. And listen, I think I've done it some years back. It makes no sense. Why would talking louder or slower make you more easy to understand to someone who doesn't speak that language? Like, it's just, yeah. And yeah, seeing her in Metropolis a little bit in that flashback, and blocking out the noise. Then also the thing about, like, oh, by the way, your power should kick in any second now. And yeah, so they get the antidote, and Crypto immediately being playful again was wonderful, and plays with both of both Kara and Ruthie. And let's see, I guess that does pretty much, yeah, I think yeah, Ruthie is. Oh wait, no, yeah, there was at least one more thing I wanted to say. Yeah, I like the very ending, and the thing with Cal being like, so I'm glad you're back. Does Crypto have to stay? Where is he gonna live? Because it's not gonna be here. That's 100% sure. And then he gets into chocolate, and it's like this thing of like, oh, dogs can't have chocolate. But it's Crypto, though. Like, we saw him chewing on a, you know, bottle cap earlier and be fine. So I don't know. That feels a little bit like, but then what else do you do? It's not like Cal is gonna have kryptonite lying around or something. Now, I think, yeah, I appreciated the bit with I think it was with Lobo, with the thing of like, Krem murdered my innocent parents. And then Lobo is like, well, I'm sure they were no angels. Like, so when he's not bounty hunting, he's a conservative political commentator in the West. Like, wow, that was, yeah. And I think that might. I think that is everything. If there's something you feel that I missed talking about, let me know in the comments, and I will reply with what I thought, if I feel I have anything to say about it, at least. No, yeah, I think that covers all. Yeah, Ruthie is going to go live with her aunt because it's a comic book adaptation, and people don't live, people don't have their parents anymore because part of their tragic backstory is losing them or something. And yeah, first there's going to be a celebration of Kara's birthday, which was also such a great, because like early on, you've got the thing where she says she's going to lie down and die, with her parents, because what does it matter anyway? That's how low she was. And I really appreciate that they actually go there. I just wish they had been daring enough to do it a little bit more, but I think I've already said what I had about that. But yeah, you know, by the, you know, because they're the, you know, she was drinking just like she didn't even seem that happy that it was her birthday. You know, that's how sad she is. That's how little joie de vivre she has at this point. And then there at the end, she's like, "Do you want to come to my birthday party?" So I guess Ruthie's aunt will have to wait until after that before spending time with her, which does, of course, mean that for the time being, that aunt is ruthless.